Okay, the stats are in, hot off the press, and the market is a-changing. We just had a interest rate announcement and things are shaping up for the summer, and so we are going to do a little bit of a different Vantage Report this time. But I wanted to give you guys an inside sneak peek at what it looks like behind the scenes at Vantage West when I share what's going on in the market and deliver the Vantage Report in real time to our team of agents. And if you stick around to the end, you'll actually get to hear what the agents, the people on the front lines are experiencing, what the fears are in the market, and what buyers are saying and what sellers are thinking in this very market. You'll find a lot of really great insights by listening to the conversation after the fact. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you haven't been to a Vantage Report before, my name is Hazzi, and I make these videos to help be your eyes and ears on the market so you can make great decisions on your real estate. So we're gonna kick it over, jump into the boardroom now, and you will see a new format. Vantage Report time, everybody. We have our Q2 stats hot off the press. So sales, starting with that, 1,220 sales for the second quarter, which is by no means a lights out quarter. We saw 20% less sales year over year, although when you compare it to the first quarter, it was double the sales. So obviously felt a lot better than going through Q1, but when we compare to last year, down significantly. When we look at the inventory though, the picture's a little bit different. We have over 3,400 listings, whereas this time last year, we only had 2,200. That's why there's a lot more choice. That's why buyers are a little bit more picky. That's 50% more inventory for them to choose through. And even as compared to the first quarter where we had 2,400 listings, that's again, 41% increase. So what we've seen in the absorption rate when we take the sales and the inventory and divide them into each other is we're sitting at right around 9 months worth of inventory. What that means is we are definitely in a buyer's market despite being in the busiest months of the year. Comparatively, our second quarter last year, we had about 5 months worth of inventory. And so we had come through 9 months of inventory in the first quarter. So it feels about the same as far as the supply and demand dynamic, which is why we didn't see that, lights out, multiple offer, really hot spring market that people have come to expect, because the supply and demand is about 80% out of whack as compared to this time last year. Now we look at some of the indicators, the days on market, we're sitting at 39 right now, whereas when we came through the first quarter, we were at 50. But if we compare it to this time last year, things are about 20% slower. It was 33 days to sell a listing back this time last year. Then when you look at the amount of discounting that we have, we're sitting right now at a 2.3% discount. Comparatively, this quarter last year, we were at 2.1. So nothing crazy, but about a 10% difference in the total discounting. So what does this all mean when it comes to price? We're sitting right at exactly $750,000 for the median sale price. The same quarter last year, we were at $760,000. So not a big change, just about 1%. And a little bit up over the first quarter of the year. We saw about a 1% change upward from the first quarter of the year. So that's the median. But if we look at the sales volume, we're seeing that the volume's down considerably. We're down 20% in total volume. But as I said before, it's a nice change from Q1 where we were half of that. We have just a little over double the amount of total sales volume looking at Q1 versus Q2. Now when you kind of break it down by segment, sales over $1 million follows suit. You're right around that minus 20% in total sales. But as you increase and ratchet up the price point, you're actually seeing that sales over $2 million are down 35% and sales over $3 million are down 40%. So as the prices increase, affordability tends to be affecting the market more and more. Then if you break it down between apartments, townhomes, and single family, you can see that spread out a little bit differently as well. Apartment sales took the biggest hit. They're down 21% year over year. Townhouses only 10%, so that's probably the most stable of the market right now, which makes sense. People need space, but they can't afford single family. And then of course the single family home market is down just about 18%. Now when you switch to the rental demand, we are seeing that rental demand has increased and there's a little bit of upward pressure on the average 2-bedroom rental suite. So that's good for the rental department. And then we are now seeing rates coming down, and we do expect a fairly good chance that this next meeting we'll see a rate drop. All signs point to that. The probability of that is very high, which will be good for the market. So now we look at benchmark pricing. This is really the most accurate way of looking at pricing. Condos have seen the biggest drop. They've seen a drop of 8.6% year over year. Single families down 5.7%. And then the townhome and the benchmark composite are showing roughly even Steven. So nothing really dramatic going on statistically. There's nothing that really makes me doubt what we've said in earlier Vantage reports, which is that we're just going to trade sideways for a little bit. Hope you got tons of value out of that. Now look, if you're interested to know what your house is worth in today's market, you can start that process by clicking the link below. And if you're interested in poking around and seeing what properties are available, there's lots of selection, as you heard in the report. And so this might be a great time to upgrade your residence. If you want to poke around, you can start that process right here on the video blog as well. And do you guys see anything else? Are you seeing anything different?
I see a much grimmer picture. I see it accelerating to the worst than trading sideways.
Yeah, seeing the stats, this is one thing, but feeling it on the ground is totally different. I feel like inventory
It's getting worse.
Buyers have way more to look at. Buyers want a more aggressive deal. Days on market seem to be much higher than the 30. So I'm seeing the stats and I'm like, oh, it's actually not as bad on there. But when I'm feeling it on the ground, it's...
Yeah, when I do listing presentations and I run through the data points, it's almost always 60 plus days average days on market. The discount I ran yesterday, it was upwards of 12%. It was, but it was on average a 12% discount. From where they started to where they finished was 12 points.
So that's interesting. The top two listing agents on the team both saying that it feels much more grim than these stats. Would you agree?
Yeah. Well, even just for example, like we did that massive discount on Pacific, and so we're getting so much interest. And when you look at anything else on the market, this is a smoking deal, and we can't get people to put pen to paper, and they're still like, well, we'll think about it. We'll think about it. So it's really grim and challenging out there. And
yeah, like we've got entry level but nice top floor corner unit condo in Lower Mission. The first 30 days we were on, we had 16 showings, not one person wrote. We had 4 showings yesterday, so we dropped at 40K. 6-7 showings booked in the first week. Mm-hmm. Still nobody's written.
But then it's interesting, like you also have certain, I think it's really, the buyer has to be connected to the product, because while I can't sell a $500,000 condo that's got like a 15% discount, my high-end $2.4 million listing went into multiples because it's a product you just can't find, and 2 buyers just absolutely fell in love with it. So sometimes it's just buyers really being connected to the product, and then out of blue you get a surprise like that.
So it'd be interesting to find out, because we are selling homes, some of our listings are moving, what is the common thread among the ones that are actually selling?
Yeah, my take would be, like she said, it's hard to replicate. It's anything niche, highly desirable, that stuff's moving. If you have a good product that's hard to replicate, that's priced well and well taken care of, that stuff seems to move. Anything that's a little quirky, bad driveways, busy roads, poorly maintained, stuff like that. And then of course, price will sabotage any listing. There's so much choice, they're picking over it. So the cool niche stuff, well taken care of.
Affordability for buyers, I find, doesn't matter how good your price is on your property, people look at the strata fees and say, no way. So that has been a huge obstacle on a couple of my listings now.
Let's talk about some of the success stories though. What about some of the stuff that has sold?
I just negotiated a deal that I thought for sure they wouldn't accept because they had a superior product in comparison to the most recent sale. It was the exact same floor plan, and I would 100% say the one we offered was a better product, but we're offering less and less and just beating it into them. It's like, well, who else is gonna choose your home if we're not? And they ended up accepting it because they don't know what the reality of getting that price would be, and they don't want to wait around for years. So it was a good discount you got, which I didn't even think was possible.
Your advice for buyers would be take a run at it.
Yeah.
You know what? Don't bring a 2022 mentality to a negotiation. It's a new market, and
Exactly.
you don't ask, you don't get.
And
But there's a lot of sellers who are really excited to.
You need to come with reason, though, of course. You can't just be lowballing for the hell of it, but our market supports those arguments, so it's worth a shot.
Like she was saying, don't be afraid to go and approach and find out what the situation is, because there's people who are listed who aren't writing in their listings, I'm desperate, I need to sell, but they're out there, and then working with the right agent who's willing to go the extra mile to find the due diligence, you might find out there's an additional 10% discount there, but again, they're not waving their hands saying, hey, here I am.
Yeah, I'm finding there's a lot of benefit too, where if you're going to take a buyer out and you know that they're maybe at a certain price point, maybe it's a little bit outside of what you're looking at, is getting a hold of a few agents before and finding out where the motivation is. I just did that with a condo buyer, and they were all like 40K over where we were, and we're like the 350 price point. It's hard to get someone from like 400 to 350 on a condo right now, right? But we did that, and then this one was our favorite. It was the highest price one at around 390. I just kept going back to the agent without just kind of like warming her up and getting her clients on board over like 5 days of just keep touching base. Are you sure this one sold for this? Are you sure it won a deal? They kept coming down like, oh, look, we'd probably consider like 10K off. By the time we wrote, we came in at 355, and she came back to me like, would your clients go to 358? And we got it locked in at that. And so it was like just kind of warming them up to it.
So patience.
Patience. And just, I think it's also just working with the other side. There's a lot of agents out there right now too that maybe don't know how to guide their clients. They're also in the same position. They're more, their clients are a little higher priced. They don't know how to get them to where they need to be, right? So you kind of assisting in that, right? Be able to provide a ton of information, really build your case, and build like this collaborative effort days even before you write the offer. Because right now too, we know they're not necessarily getting an offer the next day, but you give a little bit of time. And I've been finding lots of success in that.
You touched on something there that I think is really important, which is the collaboration with the other agent, right? It's not a fight. It should really be, the two people working together towards the common goal of getting a seller, a sale, and getting a buyer a place they wanted a great deal.
We just wrote on something yesterday. We put in offer like 150K back, and we're in negotiations right now. But that, by the time I finished prefacing the conversation with that agent and being like, hey, all the wonderful things that my client loves about it, yada yada, we're not trying to be cheeky, we're not trying to be offensive, this is where we are, and just kind of understanding, get a really good understanding of where that seller's at. There's a lot of personal things in that world as well. He was like thinking, being like, okay, let me see what I can do, like, thank you for the offer. And so there's just a lot of groundwork you got to do in the beginning too, to give that agent ammunition to help get their clients what they need to be.
You have to be able to build a case that can ultimately be shared. And I think a huge part of that is when we communicate in person, right? So if we can present our offers in person, if you can't get in person, then of course that bomb, and you're able to share your screen, show data, include the comps as PDF files, give everything that's needed to help that seller come to a new decision, right? Because they inevitably thought their home was worth based on some information that they had, might be outdated, might be misinformed, and it's your job to communicate enough that makes them have the info they need to make a new decision.
It's not just being the house up, it's being like, we understand that you have a great house in a great area, but let's talk about the more focus on like the emotional and the actual motivation side of things in both. That's where I'm finding the collaboration is coming from.
And if you can disassociate, it's much easier to tell someone the market is terrible than it is to tell them their house is terrible.
Exactly, and the more you try to do that, they're going to get almost like, wait a second, well this one had this and this sold that 2 months ago, and then they get caught up in their comparing. But you're like, wait a second, you want to get your family out in X place, and you've been on market for this long, getting beat up in it, and like it's just like you kind of touch on those points. Yeah. You're their escape, I think, right? And so I think when you're focusing more on that now than just trying to be like, well, your house sucks, so we want it. It doesn't make any sense. You need to kind of get in touch with those pieces, because it is going to be more of to get those deals right now. It is more of a motivational, emotional.
Without a doubt.
Like.
You look at the 8-year timeline, it went from 2008 to 2016 before it was a new high water mark. So if you have these people that are waiting for what was, well, there's possibly a decent chunk of time, whether it's 8 years or not, even if it was 4 years. I think a lot of people haven't grasped the fact that it could be years that you would be waiting. And then, as you say, the cost of non-performance, not getting to your grandkids or whatever the thing that you were talking about emotionally connecting to, there's a cost to that. It's not just waiting.
Yeah.
Well, on another note of using that agent collaboration, the biggest thing is they're like, well, they need this number. They're not that motivated to move, the classic line. And basically it's just like, yeah, you may not be getting the exact price you want, but I'm very confident you're going to be able to negotiate them an even better deal on the buy side. And just that resonated so much with them, and I think it's kind of the nail in the coffin that got the deal done for us.
Yeah, helping people realize that it's a relative equation, that you're going to take a little haircut here, and then you can go and pass that on to the next seller, right? When you go buy, you'll be able to give them a haircut. It's relative. That's really important for people to get their heads around, for sure.
Especially anybody moving up, right?
So, Phil, you're going on a couple listing appointments a week. I know you're getting more selective with the listings that you take. What advice are you giving to sellers right now based on the market we're in?
It really depends on the product. So I'm going in making sure I know the competition, I know the absorption rate, and we're sitting down and going over how many months or years of inventory there is. I find that, just like Nick said, 9 times out of 10, there's, in previous markets, there was the seller's hopeful price, there was the price I wanted to list it at, and then there was the real price. And I feel like we're taking 3 chunks at the market now versus just 2 before. It was like seller's price, my price, okay, let's figure out a list price somewhere in between based on the comparables. And I feel like I'm getting a little bit more aggressive with the trending market right now, saying there's their price, there's what I think, but typically it's even lower than that right now on most homes.
Because what's the danger if you chase the market down and you stay a step behind?
Well, right now, especially, we always want to make sure that we keep our sellers happy. So continuing to inform them all the time about what's going on and keeping the love meter high and getting their, doing something every day actively to try to proactively market their home. But as we know, days on market are the killer, both for buyers looking at your home, like we just talked about, like we're all working with buyers that want those deals and they're chasing those days on market going, hey, this has been 30, 60 days, we can get a better deal. So you want to keep your seller out of that zone because that's poaching area right there. So days on market really do matter. And also it sucks to have your house listed for 60 days because you got to keep it clean, you got to get the kids out, you got to get the dogs out, you got to go through the trouble of showing it. And then, a lot of times as agents, we don't even get feedback, or they don't leave a card, or they don't turn the lights off. So these people, they're suffering trying to get people through, and then they're not getting the deal. So both are kind of at a disadvantage. It's painful for sellers to be listed, it's not enjoyable, and at the same time, getting poached by someone who wants a deal is not a good feeling.
And buyer's psyche, they're always kind of want to pay, or they're willing to pay what's ahead, right? So on the way up, there was lots of sales that we'd see take place that were like, holy moly, how did they get that for it, right? But the buyers were like, well, by the time I get the keys in 60 days, the trend of the market will mean I didn't overpay. Well, it's kind of the inverse now. As things were either sideways or down, they're like, well, I don't want to buy it, close in September, October, and it'd be worth another 5% less, which is kind of the trajectory we're on. So they want to pay what it'll be worth when they get the keys, not what it's worth now. So, you look at what it's worth now and you're like, this seems fair. And this is how we all get caught up, both with our sellers and ourselves, believing the comps. We're like, well, that seems decent, but buyers aren't paying that. They want to factor in some of the risk and the trajectory of the market into what they want to pay now because they don't get the keys oftentimes for 60 plus days. So you kind of have to price ahead of the market. If it's not a deal, like if it doesn't have the perception of a deal, it's hard to get a buyer. It's like my condo, it's priced fair. 16 showings in 30 days is a lot, but they ain't right because it's okay. It's decent, but it's not a deal.
I feel like when you bracket with your competition, you need to be the deal in that bracket. That's been the most successful. So if you've got a listing and it's worth 1.1, but they want to list it just above that or whatever, you need to be the best value between 1 and 1.1. So you price it right at 1.1, and now when people are looking in that bracket, you're the obvious choice to sell next. Mm-hmm. I feel like with every bracket, that's where I've found the most success right now.
So the best advice to sellers is to be the obvious choice in your price bracket.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears for a second. We were talking about buyer psychology at the town hall. You guys wanted to have a little bit more of a conversation around that. I'd be curious, because you guys are in the trenches talking to buyers on a daily basis. What are some of the fears and concerns that buyers are bringing up today based on where we are? I don't know that interest rates are probably as much of a concern about them going up, but what's like the hot topic right now in terms of fears, concerns as it relates to buyer psychology?
For one of my guys, it's what he refers to as catching a falling knife. So, I'm really having to encourage him to think through how long he and his family are going to be living in this home. If they're going to be there 8 to 10 years, well, he doesn't really need to worry too much about the market cycle. If it goes down a little bit, and then it'll come back up in that time. But if they're going to have to move in 2-3 years, he's really worried that he's going to be paying $900,000 for a home today, will have to move in 3 years' time and might, lose $100,000 of equity. So, it seems unlikely, but that's what's on his mind and troubling him.
And when you're consulting buyers right now, time horizon should be something that you're very, very plugged into. And if a long time horizon, like you say, it's not that big of a deal because over time you can't lose. But if you have a short time horizon, you want to be mindful of that and potentially negotiate a larger margin of safety on whatever you buy.
Yeah, because if you look at the timeline from 2008 to 2016 and what it did through 16 and beyond, like, it made out like bandits. So if you're going to live there anyways, right? Even those that bought absolute peak, spring of '08, market crashes, they're going, oh my God, what did I do? What was their home? And they proceeded to live there in a home that they enjoyed for the following 8 years, and some more, and they made out like bandits. They continued to pay off their mortgage. They lived in a home that they liked. So I would suggest that timelines really matter. Buy a home that you like.
Like Amanda said, there's so much product. So when you're going out, people are like, it's nice enough, but then what else is coming?
Yeah.
Right? So you're going through and you're saying, oh, this is really good value. But yeah, we're seeing really good value through all the things that we're seeing. I want to wait and see what else is coming on the market. So it's just not having enough initiative to take action right now, even when you see that there's something really good value. They perceive, since there's so much to choose from, that there's more to come that's going to be better than what they're seeing right now. That's what I'm finding anyways.
That's what I would say is my biggest thing is, well, what if I waited a few more months? Is the pain coming in fall where people think, well, they didn't sell all summer and now they're going to be faced with potentially carrying it all winter? That's where I feel like I'll really be able to lean on the desperate seller. So I've got guys that are waiting with bated breath on the fall market, expecting to steal stuff pre-winter.
And I've built up a big inventory of investors. And right now with investors, there's absolutely nothing out there that makes sense. And it's been, I'll have investors like, well, let's just, make sure, just get to cover the mortgage. And then I'll be like, okay, well, this is what you generate for rents right now. This is what your mortgage is. And so a challenge is showing the investors, look at the discount we're getting on pricing right now and having them to see the long-term picture of being able to absorb a negative cash flow for a certain amount of time to get the better deal.
I agree. Investors are tough right now. That's where, the cash offer fund can help. And the other thing that might make sense for you to consider with investors is that Pandozzi project, getting in early on that, because I think over 85% of the units in there are cash flow. And I believe the one bedrooms are real rock star units. They pull about $3,000 a month if they're furnished, and you can get them for under $400,000. So there's going to be cash flow there. And because it's going to be 2.5 years before you get the keys, I think the market recovers in that period of time, and I certainly believe interest rates are considerably lower by the time you get your keys. And so if the market goes up in that period of time, you have no carrying costs. It's a pretty nice return. What else are we seeing for buyer psychology? What are their fears? Like, is there this belief among buyers that the crash hasn't happened yet? Because we had it happen. Like, it pulled back 18%, which is literally on par with the '08 crash. It happened from 22 through to 23. That drawdown was the big drawdown. Could it soften by 3 to 5% over the next little bit as we go through an inventory glut? Sure, it could. But in terms of the crash has happened. Where we are in the market cycle is we're kind of approaching trough. We're not just about to go into a down cycle. We've been in one now for a good solid chunk of time, 18 months or so.
There's enough belief, though, that isn't, right? Just based on the recent data, you've got stagflation being a major concern now with unemployment up, inflation still high, you've got GDP way down. Like, all of the economic data points are just getting ugly. And they've always said you're kind of a couple year lag for the pain of a rate hike cycle to be felt. And now the data is showing up that it is absolutely being felt. So you look at those data points showing up at the very time that we have twice the inventory we had prior. The average person, it's hard to compute that there isn't a decent amount more pain still to come.
I haven't had too many issues on price right now, to be honest. I haven't had people being like, oh, it's too much. Like, I'm pretty good at convincing people to take a shot at something they love. It's finding what they love. I found that in 2021, people were settling for a 6 out of 10. Got a little bit better in 2022, but now they want like a 9 or a 9.5 or an 11 in this market. Yeah. So they're looking at stuff, and if it's not absolutely perfect, 7s aren't buying, 8s aren't even looking. It's like, it's got to be a 9 or better for me to do something right now.
And that's the benefit of a buyer's market, is the balance of power exists with the buyers. They get to be choosy, and it's the payback for making me overpay for something I didn't even like 3 years ago, right? It's the nature of things. It's a pendulum. It swings the other way. But I believe that the pendulum will start to swing back towards sellers within the next year and a half. I don't think that we're going to go through a really prolonged down cycle, because they are going to probably do a series of rate cuts and throw a lot of liquidity at the market, which we know what that does. They wanted to feel the pain, they felt it. My belief is they're going to ride in on the white horse with rate cuts.
Especially with My belief in that is predicated on there being a election next year. It's hard to get elected if everybody's broke and pissed off.
Like I'm shopping with my clients like based on days on market right now. So because anyone's going to see good value. Like someone might look at it, want the 9, but they're willing to pay the 8 for the price so they can get it for the 7, right? So like if you get your clients that are kind of maybe on the fence, get them the idea that they're going to get a smoking deal on something. So you shop more like higher days of market, find those motivated buyers, and then you put those in front of people. You'll see how much quicker I think they're going to write on things. If they feel like, well, if I can get something 100K back from ask, feel like I got a huge win, they're going to probably make the move. They're not going to be so fixated on getting the perfect place because they'll be like, well, I'll make this one, as Nick says, what I want it to be. So I think that that's something I'm finding, like that's what I think buyers want right now. Buyers want to feel like they're getting the deal. Buyers want to feel like they have the power. So if you can find them the product that's been on market, motivated sellers they get a deal on, they'll be willing to write, especially if they can make it their own.
I think that is the sweet spot too. Like a 7 or 8 property at a huge discount is a good deal because the 9 and 10 out of 10 properties, there's action. Like I think we've all seen like the real rad properties that are, well taken care of and priced fairly. We have seen multiples and like they do sell reasonably quick. Mm-hmm. So lowering your expectations a little bit, I think gets you into that territory of people that are in no man's land and have been sitting there for a long time and are ripe for the poaching.
Yeah, the opportunity is definitely in the 6, 7, 8, that stuff that's not getting any action. Nobody's really loving on it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the dating market, Find yourself a 7 and make it into a 9 by investing in it.
Plastic surgery doesn't
Don't go for the 9. Everybody's on top of that already, okay? Go for the 7 and improve it.
Lower your expectations, Amy.
Apparently.
Well, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.